Hey, this is Drillick with Davis Smash in the first installment of You Smash It, I Fix It. Today we're going to talk about GameCube triggers, specifically these bad boys right here, the right and left triggers. I began noticing that a lot of my friends had kind of older GameCube controllers that were more broken in, and their wave dashing was a lot smoother, their buttons weren't as clicky. It was a lot easier to wave dash and shield in them, and I was kind of getting jealous of that. And mainly, I borrowed the backs of other controllers that were smooth in order to just acquire the same feel. But I realized there's a way to replicate that, so that's what we're going to go over. So, first things first, a disclaimer. This is a modification to a current controller. You can get this same result by breaking a controller in after many years of use, but eventually it breaks. If your controller is broken, this might fix it. If your controller is good and you break it doing this, I am no way responsible. It was totally your prerogative to open up your controller and follow me. Please do not follow me if you do not know what you're doing. Please, please do not modify your controllers in an illegal way and enter tournaments illegally. Thank you. Alright, so to begin, first things first, we need a driving screwdriver. These things are like $2. Go buy them. They're on Amazon. Just a regular screwdriver, preferably a tiny one. I have a good set over here, but probably won't need it. Some snips. Scissors didn't really do it for me, but and some super glue. This is it. All right. So the first thing you're gonna want to do is open up your GameCube controller with the driving. So let me do that real quick. So once you have all 6 of the GameCube controller screws out, you want to take off the back. I like to take off the back facing upward. It stops the buttons from falling out. Alright, so now you have 2 parts. What we're going to be dealing with is this part right here. So you can put that down, set this aside. So now you have this part, and this is where your screwdriver comes in handy. All you need to do is just take your screwdriver and take apart their small little screws right here. You'll be able to see them. This is kind of a bad controller to demonstrate on, but undo those screws. Let me get some help from this screwdriver. Okay, so once you have all 4 screws out, there are little caps here. Just lift them off, set them aside. Alright, so now you have these shoulder buttons. You should see the exposed springs and the exposed button notches that slide the analog things up and down. Go ahead, and what you gotta do is compress them, tilt this back towards you, and pull out. Careful, don't do what I just did. The spring just kind of launched out on its own, so it's no big deal, but you don't want to lose this spring right here. So do the same thing for the other side. A lot nicer. There we go. So now you have this shell. Don't worry about it. Put that away. So what we're going to be dealing with right here is just the trigger and this little plastic piece right here. So notice when the trigger hits this plastic piece, it pushes it. It pushes it against the button and activates the button. And so one would think that these are the actual culprit that causes the springiness into or rather the click of a analog, or the R and L buttons, the digital parts of them. But no, it's actually this little plastic thing that creates that click. So first things first, we're going to take this little plastic thing out, and you can do that with your screwdriver. Just be careful not to break it or It's a little finicky. Actually, you can go through this hole right here, go through the back, push through. There you go. Okay. So now that we have this piece right here, what we're going to do is we're going to take our snips and cut along the edges of this. So you're going to cut in between, somewhere in between. You could try and cut the whole thing, but I like to do it in sections so it's a little more rounded. So I think I'll just cut a little bit into here. See that? And this is what normally happens when you break in your controllers, is it starts developing these cuts, or it just starts smoothing out. And so this spring gets weaker and weaker until it becomes way easier to wave dash. Eventually it breaks. That's actually what happened with mine. It was giving a lot of false positives, so you just want to keep going around, snipping it. So now you have this little ball thing, this cylinder, and this little shell. Note how they go together, note how they were. Alright, so now what you want to do is you want to take your button, your actual physical button, and place it down and get your super glue ready. And just go ahead and apply some super glue to here, right over here around this edge. You can be a little generous with this. I try to keep mine nice and clean, but apply some amount of super glue. It's very watery actually. So now I have some super glue, and I'm going to take this, the top part of it, the black part goes up, press it against here, give it a little push, and set it out to dry. Okay. So now we're going to do the exact same thing with the L button. You can do it with just the right and have the L button more of a affirmative click. My experience, I like both. The L button eventually gets to that position anyway and eventually breaks, so it's worth noting, if you have flanges out on the edge like that, sticking out, you can go ahead and give that a little cut just to make a nice clean edge. Make sure you have a nice clean edge. So I'm going to fast forward this part of the video just so we can wait for it to dry. Alright, so it's been about 20 minutes. I have these, they're glued, they're nice and dry. So let's put these back together. I organized my parts. These parts go to the right side, these parts go to the left side. Just make sure you get those right. So anyway, first things first, put this spring in here. Actually, before we do that, we're going to grab this right side area. What you're going to do is you're going to take the old ring that you just cut off that center hole of right here, and you're going to fit it back into this piece exactly where it was. So it doesn't matter if it's rotated, just fit it back. Should be a nice hole in the center. Alright, so now that you have your spring through this cylinder, you're going to fit it over this one. Push it down. Alright, like so. Make sure you have these flanges right here that stick out of the thing that holds the plastic spring. Make sure those are facing outward from the back of the controller. It'll all make sense when you put the bracket on. So anyway, fit this right controller in, do the exact opposite of what you did in taking them out, tilt them forward, push down, might take some fidgeting, fit it in. like so. Right, and now once you're done with that, you take your end cap, fit it back over. Should fit nicely with those two flanges going in to these two holes right here, if you see those two holes. Okay. Flip them over and then screw them back. Alright, so once you've screwed that in, you want to make sure that you do the other side as well. Do the same exact thing. Alright, so now you have your assembly right here. You want to click it a few times, make sure that both parts are glued on nicely, nothing's interfering too much. Sounds good. Okay, so now all you have to do is, let's fit the cap back there. All you have to do is put it back onto the controller right here. Keep the controller face down, otherwise you turn it upside down, take off this, buttons fall out. Like I said, make sure your Z button's in correctly, and then just fit this right over. You might have to move it a bit. And then push down, should snap in place. Now, before putting it back together, test the buttons. Make sure that these buttons, they click nicely. They should have a very small click, very small compared to before, nice and smooth. Make sure they work properly, make sure your Z button works, A buttons, nothing got squeezed in between, and then all you have to do, fit the controller back together. And you're done. That's it. Hope you enjoyed. Just be on the lookout for more videos to come. It's worth noting I did it to this controller earlier. Got pretty good results. Been using it for about 3 or 4 months with nothing breaking so far, so you can go ahead and do this to your controller. Just don't blame me if it breaks. Alright, this is Drillick from Davis Smash. Hope you enjoyed my tutorial.